Hello, everyone. My name is Renata, and I'm here today with um, a dear guest from, actually, I was going to say from USA, but now we're in Germany. So, anyway, from all around the world, Jess Rose.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
originally from the US, but I've been living in Germany for quite a long time. Yeah.
I'm going to tell a quick story how I came to know you. So, Jess is a yoga teacher. And I remember I was a fresh mom, that was maybe 8 years ago. And those were hard times because before I was mom, everything seemed so clear to me in life, like crystal clear. Then I became a mom and I lost everything. I mean, I lost control, I lost myself, I didn't know what to do anymore. I was super happy to be a mom, and still, like, I felt like life control escaped me. And I don't know why I came across and how, but I came across one of your courses on DoYou yoga, and that reconciled me with life because I tried yoga before, but that didn't seem like fit to me. And when I tried with you, I was like, oh, this is yoga. Because you don't talk much, but at the same time, the things you were saying, they were essential. And somehow that was the perfect combination for me. This physical movement and then things you were saying, like how do we stay in discomfort? Because it resonated. I was always feeling in discomfort in my life at that time. And you, through yoga, you taught how to stay in discomfort, how to get bigger, I guess, than discomfort, how to tolerate it, how to practice it, how not try to run and escape it. And yeah, so this is my short, long story how I came to know you. And since then, I was always willing to interview you. And I know that from, because that was 8 years ago, you become a mom too.
Yeah.
And so that's what this all about. I just want to talk with you about, yourself, your life, how do you navigate it, how do you deal with joy and struggle being a mom. So welcome.
So, yeah, thank you for the nice intro. That's really great. And I think a lot of people do find me because I help them work through, some pain or some discomfort that they're going with going that's going on in their yoga practice. So that makes me feel really good because that's such a practical life skill to be able to move through discomfort and work with challenges and not run away from them, as you said, but especially motherhood. It's huge. This is like the entire practice of motherhood, is like, how can we be cool with discomfort and make peace with the challenge and know that it's just like a daily practice. It doesn't really ever end.
I know what it's like for you, because especially when we become a mom, like we always run out of time. Do you still practice? Do you find time for yoga? How do you do that?
Yeah, I do, but my practice has changed a lot since becoming a mom. So before, this was like 4 years ago, is when I had my son, so my first kid. And before having him, I would practice, like do a physical practice, my asana practice, about, between 60 and 90 minutes per day with about 1 day off per week. And sometimes it would be like 3 hours a day. I would take like two, full length classes a day and just be like exhausted, but happy and sweaty and, just open. And then after having my son, I didn't realize that it was, life was going to change so much and that I would just be laying around in bed most days, or just like feeding him and, changing diapers just takes up so much time as well. Um, and yeah, so my practice really changed then. And then as he started to get older, and then my practice was breath work that I would do like while I was breastfeeding him, meditation that I would do in bed as I was breastfeeding him, and then reading. So reading lots of, ancient texts on yoga, also newer interpretations of yoga, but just, I had time actually for the first time in a while to read and sit down to just like read books. And that was a good change, I think. And that it's part of yoga as well. Svadhyaya is part of yoga. It's one of part of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, if you've heard of that book. And it's about self-study, and it's about studying like the ancient texts as well, and seeing what the ancient yogis have to say about life, and how they can help us with that. So my practice changed from really physical to a lot more lazy, let's say, a lot more relaxed meditation, pranayama, and reading and self-study. And then by the time my son started getting a little bit older, we sent him off to preschool, and then I had some time again. And then I got pregnant right away again. And I was like, oh man, I was so excited to get back to my asana practice, like full force. And now here I am with like this big belly again. And so the whole process started over. And in between, I do a lot of prenatal yoga when I'm pregnant. So that was something, but still my physical practice has definitely changed. And I think also, this is just with yoga in general, whether or not you have children, your practice changes over the years, over the decades. And at some periods in your life, it'll be a lot more movement based. And in other periods of your life, it'll be a lot more chill and, meditative. So I'm okay with that. And especially I lead teacher training programs, and I train other people how to become yoga teachers. And so there's a lot of study involved in my sort of line of yoga teaching work. So it's also okay for me, and it all, makes sense. But yeah, now that my daughter is 2, she'll be 2 in December, I'm slowly getting back to my physical practice again and doing more hatha, more vinyasa. I'm of course lounging around and reading a lot and, cuddling her, and doing all that stuff, but it's a lot more physical again.
But see, while you were talking, I was noticing the proofs that you were doing yoga before you had children, because you are so flexible. You said, oh, so I like it all, you got it almost immediately. Like I noticed that I couldn't do as much asanas as I did before. So I started breathing while I was breastfeeding, and I started meditating while I was breastfeeding. While for me, it took 3 years to realize that. Every time my daughter would ask for me, Mom, lay down with me. And that would go for hours sometimes, really, like, because she took time to get asleep. I was like, all this time I could do yoga or I could do something else, and there is nothing I can do. And it took me 3 years to understand that there is plenty of things I could do. I could, do some breathing exercises. I could do meditation. So that, I see the difference. You were doing yoga way before becoming a mom, and you had already all this, approach that everything in life is kind of, opportunity. You don't have to struggle in it. You don't have to make yourself unhappy about it. And you breastfeed and you meditate.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful for the baby as well. If you're in that kind of a state, in your mind and your body, I think it definitely transfers and passes on from, parent to child. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial for everyone involved. But yeah, I think if I wasn't so deep into yoga, I also wouldn't have made the connection or realized that this was something that I could do as I was laying down with my babies. And my kids are both the same way. It's like, it takes 2 hours to get my daughter to fall asleep. So I just lay there and like read half of a book or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is part of it. It's non-attachment. Yeah.
How did you come across yoga? How did you even, connected that the first time?
So similar to you, when I first tried yoga, I was like, yuck, no thanks. This is not my thing. And back in the day, I was just a lot, I did sports. Like I played basketball. I was on a soccer team. I like to go surfing, and, I don't know. I was just like very fast paced, right? And young. I was like, when I tried my first yoga class, I think I was 20 or something like that. So just like, rah. And yeah, so I went, and the teacher was like, okay, everyone sit down and like roll your head from side to side or whatever. And I was like, this is so boring. And I started feeling like I was going to black out as well. We did that for like 5 minutes, like these neck rolls, and it was in a really hot room, and it was packed in there. It was in like a community center or like a YMCA. and I started feeling like I was going to pass out. So I was like, I'm out of here. And I left, and I thought, okay, that was it. There's no more yoga in my life. That's okay. There's plenty of other things that I can do. And then my mom got cancer a few years after that. I think it was something like 4 or 5 years later. And I went back to the US. So I had already moved to Germany in that time. And then when she got sick, I went back to the US to be there for her surgery and, you know, her treatment, and to just try to help out. Um, and so when she was still in the hospital, like right after her surgery, she was like, I want to go to yoga class. And I was like, are you sure, Mom? Like, you can't even walk. Like, you just were cut open yesterday. And she was like, no, just take me. So there was, in the cancer hospital, they had yoga classes for, you know, cancer patients. And so we get there, and it's obviously like the most relaxed thing you can ever imagine. We didn't do like warrior poses or any, like, you know, anything physical really. And we went there and we laid down, and the teacher walked us through a guided meditation. So like a visualization on healing, and on energy and on light in the body. And we did some breath work as well. And that was it. So we just laid on the floor for like an hour. Um, and I was like, wow, okay, this was really boring again, just like my first experience with yoga. But I think it, you know, really helped my mom. Like, she was in pretty good spirits after that class. So I was like, okay, that's good. Let's do this again. So the next day we went and we kept going. And after like a week, I realized that I was really looking forward to it. Like, it was the highlight of my day. And yeah, eventually, I mean, we were in the cancer hospital for over a month while my mom recovered. It was a really big surgery. And we kept going. And after a couple of weeks, we started doing some standing poses, like with a chair. So we did chair yoga. And I was like, okay, this is, you know, this is what yoga is. You like sit on a chair and stretch your arms out to the side. This is literally the only thing I knew about yoga at this point. And so I thought you had to like sit on a chair to do yoga. And finally, you know, my mom got out of the hospital and I flew back to Germany. I went back home. This was like 2 months later or something. And when I was there, I realized that I got immediately stressed out. I was surrounded by, you know, concrete and buildings and lots of noises and lights and whatever. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try this yoga thing again. That actually did something for me. And so one of my friends, his wife is a yoga teacher, and I started going to her classes, and she taught yin. And so I became a yinster, like was kind of a junkie for yin. And I would go, you know, 3 or 4 times a week to yin class, and, you know, just sit there and stretch and like lay around. And I loved it. And it was super quiet and relaxed. And again, I didn't know that there were other kinds of yoga. Like, that's all that I knew. And I was like, okay, yeah, this looks a lot like what I did, you know, with my mom. And at some point, I don't even remember how, but I ended up at a Jiva Mukti yoga class in Berlin. I don't know if you know anything about Jiva Mukti, but it's like very strong. It's a very, very strong physical practice. There's handstands just like thrown in everywhere. There's headstands, there's arm balances. And I was like, what? This is yoga? Are you serious? Like, people were doing crow pose and, you know, like their legs in the air. And I was just like expecting to lay down, you know, the whole class and stretch. And I got really, really excited. And I started going regularly to Jiva Mukti classes and Hatha yoga classes and working on arm balances and headstands and handstands. And that just fit a lot more with where I was at in my life and what I, you know, like to do at the time, which is just like be really active and look at what I can do. So that was really cool. And then I had this balance of the yin and the yang. And just, you know, when you have those two sides of this one practice, no matter how you're feeling, no matter if you're, you know, high energy one day, low energy the next, or if you're sick or whatever, there's always going to be a practice for you. So that's when I was like, I'm legitimately addicted to yoga. And I haven't ever looked back.
Since when? What do you think it gave you? Like, what did yoga have that you were missing at that time?
Yeah, I can only say this in retrospect, I think, because at the time I didn't know that anything was missing or that things were out of balance or out of tune. But yeah, of course, I mean, it's a way to release stress and be calm and, you know, feel centered and grounded as you know, make your way through your day and go to work and whatever it is that you do. Everyone needs to feel like they're kind of, I don't know, they've got some sort of foundational level of being okay and calm. So there was that. But the more I practiced, and especially after I went to India for the very first time and started learning about the philosophy of yoga, this is when things really started to be like fireworks going off in my head. Like everything that I was taught in my kind of Western society and upbringing and education, I didn't realize at the time that there were other ways to look at life. I just didn't know. Um, I didn't know that, you know, not the entire world was obsessed with materialism and capitalism and, you know, having more and more and more and just feeling like you're not enough all the time. I didn't know that that kind of wasn't the messaging of every culture in the world. And so when I started learning yoga philosophy and spending time in India and just seeing kind of like how the other half of the world lives, that was really eye-opening to me. And I think like for the vast majority of people that have any sort of, I don't know, spiritual awakening or a moment of realization, right? Where you're just like, wow, maybe I need to change things in my life. It's usually when you're going through struggle. It's usually in these moments of challenge and things happen that you didn't expect, or you know, you think like on a rational level, yeah, of course, like bad stuff happens to everyone. But when it actually starts to happen to you, then I think a lot of people, that's when they find their spirituality. And for me, it was the first time I had a devastating thing happen in my life, I didn't have yoga. And it hit me like a brick wall. Like I felt like you know, I'd been run over by a truck like every day for an entire year straight. I had nothing to like hold on to. And then the second time, and that was the death of my best friend when I was 20 years old. And then another one of my friends died. My best friend again died when I was 30. But this time I had yoga and I had practices. I had meditation, I had breath work, but it was more than that. It was I had a different outlook on the world. And like maybe we're bigger than our body. Maybe, you know, these four walls around me and like my job and my identity, maybe that's not all that there is. Maybe that's, you know, just one little part of existence. And there's something very, very big beyond that. But I never learned anything like that in the West. And it was so helpful. It was just so incredibly helpful to have yoga, and not just the asana practice, not the physical practice of yoga, but everything else. I mean, that's when I realized like, wow, I was really missing something back then, because anytime, you know, something bad happened, I would just like grab a bottle of whiskey or whatever, just like injure myself and try to like destroy and run away and push everything away. And that's just, you know, that's only going to work in the moment and no longer than that. So yeah, I think in retrospect, yoga is super helpful in just helping navigate all the waves of life.
I remember on one of your classes, you mentioned Pema Chodron, and that was the first time I heard her name. Yeah. And since then, I bought all of her books and read all of them. And I have all of them by my like bed, because it's, when I think about it, it's like her books are not reassuring about life.
No.
They're true, they are real, and they always very alive. Like you could feel this groundlessness that she talks about. You could feel it. But and then I was thinking, like, why do I read them all the time? Like there are, you know, better books to calm, to relax. I was like, no, but that's what relaxes me, because I feel connected through her words. I feel connected to other people, because this aliveness I feel my side inside of me, this groundlessness I feel all the time. So that's how she feels too. And if there are at least two of us, that means I'm not alone anymore. Yeah. That means that whatever happens to me somehow happened or will happen to all the people around me. And that's, strangely enough, what calms me and what makes me relax. And as you were saying, well, Pema Chodron was a big discovery for me because I have never read a book like her, but at the same time, the words she was using and the reality she was describing, that was something I always knew inside me. It's just nothing or no one resonated with around me. Like people were like differently. I had a different upbringing. My parents were different. My sisters were different. But it's like inside of me, I always knew that. That's real life. That's how it is. That's how we all live. And yeah, I found a lot of relief in her book. So thank you for that. Because I don't know if I would have ever discovered Pema Chodron myself.
Yeah, she is an incredible teacher. And I'm really happy that you know, have collected her books and are reading them. I think one of the biggest myths about yoga and about, I mean, Pema Chodron is a Buddhist, right? But kind of like this yoga spirituality world, I think one of the biggest myths is that it's this idea of like good vibes only. Have you heard this phrase, right? And in reality, it's totally the opposite. Like if you get into Buddhism, if you get into yoga and you really start to like, you know, listen to what the teachers of these lineages have to say, they never are like, oh, life should always be like happy and rainbows and sunshine. No, it's all the opposite. It's like, hey, big slap in the face. Like, of course, life cannot just be good all the time. Like there is a balance. It's, you know, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. And there's also the stuff in the middle that's just neutral. And that's what life is all about. And you have to, like, the biggest challenge and the biggest practice is just learning how to be cool in like the heavy times, the darker times. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. Like whenever I hear people talking about like, oh, yogis are just like, oh, good vibes and whatever. I'm like, that's not really what yoga is. It's really not. It's
but
more
then
death is coming.
I know, but then it's difficult to believe you because you are smiling all the time. So obviously we tend to believe that, you know, it's all good vibes. And it's hard to explain because it's not about enjoying struggle or enjoying sadness when it comes. It's about accepting it. But then again, if you don't experience that inside you, if you only know that somehow theoretically, it's hard to make sense out of it.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just a practice, right? So like meditation, for example, if you go to a meditation retreat, the whole practice of the meditation retreat is just to help you understand that you've got a bunch of skeletons in your closet and they're going to come out and they're going to try to bite you. When you turn off Netflix and put your work away, what's there in your mind? It's a bunch of stuff that you've like been pushing away and trying not to deal with. Yeah. And that stuff that's the teaching. Like that is the lesson. And once you can figure out how to deal with this quote unquote, like negative side of yourself or your life, this is when the positive side becomes that much more beautiful. And you see like things that you had pushed away before, if you can actually be present with them every day, like I'm going to die. Everybody that I love is going to die, or I'm not going to have enough time to do the things that I want to do, like everything that I want to do in my life, or my body is getting older and it can't do the things that it once did, or, you know, my dream to become, I don't know, a professional skier or whatever, it's not going to happen. Like if you can just sit with these things and carry them with you during the day, not that you get depressed and you sit around and you're like, oh, but if you just acknowledge like life is happening and everything is changing, and the things that I thought that I, you know, wanted or needed to be happy, okay, maybe they're not going to happen in the way that I thought. But if you can be like open to whatever is coming in instead, then you find this happiness, right? And so even if life just like throws you rocks and stones, like if you just acknowledge like, yes, that's what life does, okay, then it's so much easier to just like take it all, you know, in stride and smile about it.
It's like having this, what if this is it moment? Like if you ask yourself, what if my life is going to be like that for the rest of, the days I have here? Because we have no control. What if this is it? Then you notice that you have something inside you that raises something that wants to live no matter what. Like it, because as long as we have this hope that maybe things will change, maybe I'm gonna have more time, maybe I'm gonna do that, maybe I'm gonna go on vacation or move to another country. But what if not? Then there's still something inside you that wanna live even in those conditions, and you find a way to be creative, to be playful, and to enjoy whatever life throws at you. Or maybe sometimes you throw some stones at life, but still it's better than complain or say that why my life is so bad, or why does that always happens to me? Because then you don't live, you stop living before you even die.
Yeah, it's like living in a dream world, where you just have these projections and ideas about how things should be, and it's just not reality. And once you can just grasp a hold of, okay, this is how it is right now, then it just feels a lot easier and a lot more playful as well.
When you become a mom, have you discovered some new skeletons in your closet?
Definitely. All right, let's say the ones that were always there, but that I, preferred to think were not there anymore. Impatience being the biggest one by far. And also anger. Anger is so easy. It's such a quick and easy emotion to resort to anytime there's anything stressful, or anything doesn't go the way that you plan or that you want it to go, then anger just comes up right away. And yeah, I think for me, it's those two in particular. And when you're living as a single person, kind of doing whatever you want to with your life, it's easy to think like, I'm not an angry person, or I'm not an impatient person, because you're the only person, that you have to take care of, and your schedule is pretty open. It doesn't matter. Right. But once like other people get thrown into the mix, and like people that are dependent upon you, and then you still have things that you want to do in your own life, then it starts to get really stressful, like your time and your energy, it just turns into like this big blob of chaos. And for me, that's when I realized like, wow, I am incredibly impatient, and I am really angry a lot of the time. And I need to just like figure it out. Like, how can I deal with this? So yeah, those have been for me the big two things.
But it doesn't seem to affect you. How do you do that? Because you could say, I really get angry, and then beat yourself up for it, but you don't do that. How do you do that? How do you become friends with what is? And what is that you get angry?
Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy one. I'll be really honest. And it's not one that I'm proud of. That's for sure. Like being impatient, okay, that's one thing. But like admitting that I'm an angry person sometimes when things don't go my way, or things don't move as fast as I want them to, or whatever. It's difficult to admit and to, talk about. But in my mind, anger is the easiest emotion. Like, I think many of us, that's the first thing that we like resort to when something goes wrong. It's just like, you're angry. It's not that we like automatically become like sad or something else. It's usually just like anger comes up. And I know that this is a lived experience that every human on the planet is working with and through, whether they realize it or not. So again, it's like this feeling of kind of like, oh yes, I have this shitty thing happening. Sorry, for the vocabulary there, but everyone else is having it too. So it makes it like a little bit easier to swallow, I think. But it's also just part of life, and it's part of being brought up in a culture that places a lot of expectation on you to be a certain way and achieve certain things. And then when you also couple that with the fact that time moves really fast and there's not enough time to do everything that you think that you want to, then it's so easy to be like anger. I'm just so angry about these two things not working out together. All the things that I want to do in this limited time. And then the fact that time just keeps, moving, and you're not cleaning up your toys in the right amount of time for me, or you want to stay up later than I want to stay up because I have work to do after you go to bed, or it's like everything, like you need to eat your food faster because we have to go to this other place so that then I can go do what I want to do after that. And yeah, I think it's just so easy as a parent to get to this place of anger very, very quickly because you feel like you lose control of your time, and your needs get pushed back, really far back.
And
Yeah.
I remember I was feeling denied as a person, as a human being, because you always have to put yourself second. And part of it is very normal because with young kids, obviously, you have to put yourself second because they are dependent on you. But still, inside this anger was about, what about me? What about me? Where do I have this time and space to live? And so what do you do? Let's say you notice that you're getting angry, and maybe you even have those thoughts that tells you, oh, all those years of meditation and yoga practice, and you still get angry, Jess. What's wrong with you? And then what? So what do you do with that? You notice it, it's there. What do you do?
Yeah. Okay. So what's the practice? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So the first part of the practice is just acknowledging that it's there. I think that's not even always so easy, because if you're really in the moment and you're just like a tornado of emotion, it's hard to just like stop and say, I'm angry, right?
Oh, I'm angry.
Yeah. Like that's labeling it, and it's putting it into like a different category almost. Like when you think about like, no, but there's this thing and this thing and this thing,
Yes.
and like you get so caught up in like the details of what's happening.
Or I can imagine my husband saying to me, you are angry. I would say, no, I'm not angry.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm not angry.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you start to just say, I'm not angry, but this and this and this and
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first big step, is just like step back and say, I'm angry, and just label it, label it as this bigger emotion that's happening. And then it's a little bit easier to work with. Once you define something and you put a name to it, you kind of have a little bit more power over it. So that's the first step, is to just be like, I'm angry. And instead of, yelling at the kids or yelling at my partner, I can just be like, I'm so angry with you right now. Like, I'm pissed off. And sometimes I say that to my kids too. Like, instead of screaming at them, I'm like, I'm just so angry. And it really helps. And then after that, and it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I'm just like, that's not happening today. But if I'm able to then label it and say, like, I'm angry with you for this, this, and this, the next thing is usually for me to remove myself from the situation and breathe. So this is where a pranayama practice is super like helpful. And it doesn't even matter which pranayama practice you want to do. Just taking the time out to breathe and like focus on something else and concentrate on your breath. It always calms the nervous system 100% of the time. So that's like the next step. And yeah, after that, then it really depends on the situation as it moves forward from there, because everything is an interaction, right, between two or more people when it comes to relationships. So yeah, it really depends from there. But those are the first two things: labeling it as anger, stepping away, doing some breath work.
What do you think that changed? Because it can't change what happens. So it doesn't change. I mean, the breathing exercise, because it doesn't change that you were angry. It doesn't change that maybe you yelled. It doesn't change that you are this person who still gets angry. So you do some, breathing exercise. What do you think it changes? Because you said, it calms the nervous system. Does it change your perspective on life? Does it make you remember things that about life? I mean, what does it change for you? What does it have that it somehow makes it more acceptable than before?
Yeah. I think, first of all, there's like the connecting with the physical body is always helpful, right? So just like linking the breath and like feeling how it affects the body, right? So you can feel like everything slows down a little bit, the anger subsides a little bit. That's the first thing. It's just like being aware of how your body feels. But I think the second thing, which is probably bigger, is if you can step away from the actual situation that's happening, your perspective changes a little bit. And especially if you connect to the breath, which is this big universal thing that is there for all of us and it unites all of us. I think it's really helpful. And this is something that yoga talks about a lot. The difference between like little me and the big, vast universe. And little me is important, yes, and needs to be taken care of, yes, all of these things. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, little me is not that important. And little me is also a huge part of the vast universe. It's all intertwined and connected. And essentially, we are the vast universe deep down inside. And I think breathing really helps us tap into this feeling of like, wow, there's something bigger. There's something deep down inside that's always calm. It's always still. It's always present. And if I can just like push away all the little things that are going on in daily life that are really upsetting me and tap back into that, then everything's okay again. It's like, it's just this, little stuff that pops up in life. And at the end of the day, there's this big, vast blanket of consciousness or energy or whatever you want to call it. And that's what it's all about. And I get that feeling when I just step away and breathe. I'm like, okay, whatever was happening is really not that important.
It's like this, I don't know, it's hard to explain how, but I mean, the secret of this, meditation or breathing exercise, but I get the same feeling too. It's like you are still in front of a struggle, you are still in front of an issue, but you don't feel that compelled to go and fix it. It's like something inside you loosens up or opens up, and you are against the same issue you had 3 minutes before. It's still there, the screaming child. He wouldn't do things you want him to do, but somehow it doesn't feel that life-threatening. It doesn't seem that out of control. It doesn't seem a problem anymore. And I know when I say that, it sounds strange, like how could you know that that's not a problem anymore? It's still a problem, but it's an issue maybe, but you don't feel like there's something you had to fix about it, or there's a problem you really should fix. You kind of get this perspective that, maybe that's not what this is all about, living on this earth, not about all those little situations every day in your house and you fixing them. Maybe there's another, bigger perspective. And breathing helps me to connect with that. Even if I don't know what to do, I still don't know what to do with this, screaming child. But that doesn't seem a problem anymore.
Yeah. And usually, once you center yourself and you are calm and like the kind of, vibrational waves that you're sending out into the world and towards your child start to like neutralize a little bit, then the child usually starts to calm down as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the more we get worked up and angry, of course, the child starts screaming harder and it just like spirals out of control. So I think, again, it's just beneficial for everyone if, as parents, if we just like meditate and calm down and learn how to breathe and all of this stuff, it's just so great for everyone involved.
So how do we start? Let's say we never did that, and this meditation thing seems so mysterious. We don't even know where to start. How do we start?
So yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's not one size fits all, unfortunately. And with yoga, there's no easy answer to any question that you could ever have. The answer is always, it depends on you. For some people, they need an app like Headspace or something in order to meditate. Like they need their hand to be held and to be guided through it step by step. And for other people, you know, they might be comfortable with silence already and with being still. And for them, all they need to do is close their eyes and follow their breath, you know, see how it feels to breathe and what temperature their breath is and what effect it has on their mind. So it really depends. Other people need to lay down and have, you know, crystals on their chakras and have a Reiki person, you know, trying to heal them. Like it really depends on, you know, your level of like spirituality and mysticism and everything. So yeah, there is no easy answer, but I think every one of us can benefit from learning how to breathe, like to just step away from life, you know, even when things aren't chaos, like when you're not in the middle of like the eye of the hurricane, right? But just like learning how to step away from your work once in a while, you know, take a break and do some breathwork practices. And there's so many different ones that you can do, but I think one of the easiest ones to remember, at least, is counted breathing. Just counting your breath. It gives you something to concentrate on, and it's just really clear, and the benefits come immediately. So you can just pick like, okay, I'm going to inhale for 4 counts and exhale for 4 counts, or you can inhale for 6 and exhale for 6, or whatever. You can switch it up in any way that you want to. You can hold your breath in between. You can hold your breath out. But that one seems to work really well for many, many people all over the world. So that's one that I would definitely recommend. Just count your breath. And if you lose count, you just start over again. And, you know, it's always really graspable. It's like counting to 4. Everyone can do that, right?
Thank you. Are you still on DoYou Yoga? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I think those classes are kind of there forever.
Oh,
And
okay.
they changed their name to DoYou now. So they took the yoga out because they were
Oh,
starting lots
DoYou.
of like
Okay.
other kinds of teachers. So yeah, you can go to doyou.com. I'm there. I've got a 30-day challenge that's free. That's how a lot of people get to know my teaching. It's like, you know, quick 10 to 20-minute videos every day for 30 days. I also teach on a platform called You Aligned. This is kind of like newer material in the last few years, we could say. So those classes are great, and I think you know, more representative of how I teach now. And yeah, then I lead yoga teacher training. So if anyone is interested in becoming a yoga teacher and learning about yoga philosophy and breathwork practices and meditation, then we get really, really deep into all of that stuff. And my yoga school is called Movement Wisdom School of Yoga. So if you go to movementwisdomyoga.com, then you can find the teacher training program.
Thank you. And you also have your website, and I guess can we use that too to find all the information?
Yeah, so that now just immediately forwards to movementwisdomyoga.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for this lovely and warm and inspiring conversation. And I'm so grateful I have met you. And even if I don't go on DoYou Yoga anymore, I still feel your presence. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Renata. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.